And welcome back, everybody. This is The Refresh Point. My name is Ben, and as always, I'm joined by my constant co-host, Steve. Steve, how's it going?
I am stressed. We are in the midst of doing some intense Worlds preparation, and of course the holidays are over, so it's back to the work grind as well. So that is all we are thinking about. We got Weiss in one hand, we got the job in the other, and we are just grinding hard. Getting right to it. And today we're also joined by a two-time world champion, Houston's strongest soldier, perhaps not a deck builder, but a pilot with a winning mindset. It's Riaz. Riaz, how's it going?
It's going good.
Happy New Year's, lads. We've made it. We're here. We've got just about 1 month before the 2023 BCS World Championship in Tokyo, Japan. So we'll be talking about what we're thinking will show up. Riaz will head to center stage, and the Refresh Point has merchandise. We're gonna dive in after y'all shuffle your decks, tap or cut, and we'll get right into the Refresh Point with some breaking news. Happy New Year's!
Yeah, Happy New Year's to you as well, Ben, and you, Riaz.
Same to y'all as well.
Yeah, what did you do for the holidays, Riaz?
I just worked.
Yeah.
You know, the airport never sleeps.
You know, the airport does never sleep. It's a rough one out there. Honestly, it's probably the busiest time, I would guess. Or maybe it's not, I don't know. Is it just the same amount of busy, or just same old Riaz?
Oh, it's busy the days before and after the actual holiday days.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Ben, you went to see the family?
Yeah, went to see the family in Houston. You know, I had 5 excruciatingly painful days of not being able to play Weiss Schwarz. And, you know, we came out on the other side of that and immediately jammed like 7 games at your house. So
yeah,
it's works out.
It feels like I feel like in the last 3 weeks I have played more Weiss Schwarz than in the last ever.
You're finally joining the rest of us fiends in the Dallas area.
I'm actually trying
just
hard.
Play every day with reckless abandon for like health and mental wellness.
The only reason it's even possible is because I've managed to connive people to come to my house. Where like my win rates are good and I'm comfortable and I don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah. What's your playtesting been looking like, real quick, Riaz?
Oh, it's you know, I get like, just because of work, I get like 3 days or so per week of good like 5-6 hour playtesting.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's about it.
All right.
Hopefully some more to come though as we get closer to the Worlds.
True.
Yeah,
True.
Starting this week,
it's time.
I'm turning it up to 11.
Yeah, it's time for sure. So if you didn't know and you have never listened to us and you don't look at anything competitive Weiss Schwarz, Worlds is coming. It's in 1 month. It's in it's on February 3rd of 2024 for the 2023 World Championships. Don't question it. And hopefully, ideally, probably there won't be another ban list update. So everybody is just being like, okay, well, we've got a meta that's fairly knowledgeable at this point, minus Guilty Gear, and it's time to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's Guilty Gear was the last, the last shoe to drop on the meta. There's not going to be anything else to surprise you with, and so I think that the meta is fairly well understood at this point by the players who are going to be playing in it. But as always, Weiss is the type of game that they're going to be dark horses, and they show up at Worlds every single year, and it's just a matter of who's the most clever to really put those ideas together.
Yeah. And so we will be talking about that right after this sponsored break. That sponsor being us. We're making merchandise. You can buy it if you'd like We have a Ko-fi, whatever. I don't understand how it's spelled.
We need to just do it like Star Trek, where one of us says it the first time and we say it that way forever.
All right. We have a Ko-fi page.
Bam. That's
the Ko-fi page has memberships, has merchandise, and you can go and spend your money on it if you want. We figured we'd like make this option available for people. And if you would like to support us in any way, this Pro Tools subscription isn't getting any cheaper. We've got shirts. What is it? Now, instead of paying Teespring $25 and we get nothing, you can pay us $10, and we will lovingly hand make this shirt that says, "I survived Triple Gura, and all I got was this shitty t-shirt." In the United States, Canada, Mexico, and North America. If you want this shipped international, like,
DM us.
Yeah,
we'll work something out.
We'll work something out. Like,
but it won't be cheap.
Like we're splitting the $30 shipping, man. It's hard, all right. We'll also have stickers, going first and going second cards, and for just a measly $5, you can commission us to make your ambitious deck of your dreams come into this world. Play test it at locals, record footage of it, record gameplay footage of it for you, so you can have a whole template of how we might make your ambitious deck idea come true, and compare it to your own, and throw it against your friends, and we'll talk about it on the show for just $5. And if you would like to repeatedly throw $5 at us, say at a monthly interval, you can do that. And for that, you'll get your name in the description below, and one of the $5 bonuses every month. A sticker, going first, going second cards, or just a ambitious deck commission. All you.
So if you have anything else that you think you would like to get from us, feel free to comment on whatever platform you're listening to this to on, and let us know, because we can be bought. We can. It's a question of how much, but I promise we're cheap. This is all we know.
And so if you feel crazy enough that you would like to throw $10 at us a month, which is something that I don't think any of you are willing to do, but if you would like to prove me wrong, you will literally manifest a credit sequence into existence. We don't do credits right now, but if you would like to support us for $10 a month, we'll start making credits and put you in it as the $10 a month supporter.
Also, we'll give you some behind the scenes access where you can interface with us directly and perhaps look at our pre-planning and see what we're going to talk about in future episodes.
Yeah, we'll give you a nice little write-up of kind of how the episode went, how we prepped it, all sorts of fun stuff. And yeah, if you give us $10 a month, you get that. And if you're on YouTube, I will literally manifest a credit sequence so that your name can be in it with flashy colors. A color of your choice. But with our little sponsor break over, because there isn't really that much other news. There's a JP stream tonight as we're recording this.
Yes.
We literally always record this before the news happens.
It's very weird how bad we are at ascertaining when that should be.
It's a hard knock life. We just record when we would like to record.
But we're only taking a passing interest in it. If for no other reason, then we might see some future sets that might come to English, or perhaps a ban list update that may eventually trickle down to English. You never know, but that announcement will be tonight. I believe it's 11:30 our time here in Central Standard.
Yeah. But for now, waiting in the wings, now coming back out to position 0, center stage, is Riaz. So Riaz, how's it going? Again.
Oh, it's going good, just it's
we're just going through it. So just to lead off, why are you still playing this game, and what draws you into it still?
And I love the fact that this game allows for like a lot of creativity and deck building. And I feel like it's one of these games where, like, if you're good enough, you can always find outs as you play games to try to win them. Like they always feels like there's the ability to come back.
Right.
And I just enjoy watching the mechanics unfold before me. Like ironically, all these cards to me are a blank picture. There's no picture on them to me. I just look at them as text.
Yep. It's just, there's some girl on it, some guy, they exist.
Before we get too deep into it, Riaz, do you want to speak briefly about your accomplishments in the game, who you are when you started playing, and how you got started with the game?
I started in 2012. At this time, there was like almost no Weiss at all in Houston. Like at most, at Walmart, you may have saw like Modica trial decks or something.
Wow.
And that was about it. And how I found about the game was I was taking Japanese classes at Lone Star College, and two of the guys there were playing it, and I was like, cool, there's a card game with anime pictures on it. And I asked them after class if they wanted to teach me, and then we became friends after a couple of weeks, and I just started playing the game. We all just played with a bunch of trial decks, and then after that we imported the game over from Japan, but got a bunch of JP sets and started playing them with each other, and then that's how I started the game.
And how many times have you been to Worlds?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think this is the 5th time. Let's see, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2022, and 2023.
I mean, that's too many. That's too many times.
That's 5 times.
You can't expect him to know that off the top of his head.
So you and I and our previous guest Clinton, we've been playing the game forever. Do you think that the game is better now than it used to be?
I think the game is better in a lot of aspects than it used to be. I think there's a lot less hoping for things to happen, and it's more so when you're gonna make them happen. Like I like the back in the day, it felt like a lot of times because the game was very slow, you had a lot of time for game states to completely change. As it is now, I feel like it's a lot faster. A lot of cards do a lot more. And I kind of like that. I think it's in a better place, but there's also like some downsides that came with it because the game itself didn't change, like the rules of the game. I do think we're in a weird spot right now where the game sometimes, a lot of decks make it too fast. So like while I like it a lot, there's some cons that came with the current game we play.
What do you think are those cons and kind of downsides in particular?
The biggest con is the fact that finishers are just incredibly strong. A lot of the finishers currently, for the newer sets, they do a lot for a lot less. And I think the problem here is that the game has changed beyond like you can die so easily from level 2 to a lot of finishers, and I feel that is one problem that's happened. And now the game is not only like, can I build this deck, can I play my deck, but does my deck account for like multiple scenarios that could happen at 2, so I don't just get yeeted straight to dead from like level 2.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of touching on that and looping back on a point you made earlier, I think you've previously said that deck building wasn't your biggest strong suit, and that you could take kind of like a relevant deck of 50 cards and pilot it to victory. And I'm curious why you think that's the case, and what you think in particular makes a good deck builder in Weiss Schwarz.
So let's start off with what makes a good deck builder in Weiss Schwarz. I think The first thing for a good deck builder is that they need to see, first gotta choose, like, you gotta know which combos are fitting for the meta. So like you have to have an understanding of the meta that you plan to play in to deck build correctly. And then on top of that is how consistent can you get those strategies you want to get off? How consistent can you pull them off throughout the game? So I think, experience plus game knowledge, I guess it comes with experience, and then like understanding like what's being played, what can be played. I think those are things that need to be present for a good deck builder. As for why I think I can pilot most decent decks and to victory, it's because I think I've spent so much time playing like this game. There was like years where I would play 40 to 50 hours per week. And it got to a point where I've seen so many different game states, so many different effects that I just don't. Piloting deck is never my problem. In fact, I think I can just like, I generally help fix people's decks if they're already built. So I think just like the sheer amount of like hours I put into the game, I think is what made it a lot easier for me to just pilot decks.
Right.
I think I answered all your questions.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think so. And so, you've gone to Worlds before. In fact, 4 times before, by your own counting. Now, we're going in the 5th time. What do you think is the difference in your mental state between the first time you went to Worlds and qualified and now?
The difference here is like the hardest thing for me that bothers my mental state is, am I making the right choice in my deck? I think the first time I went to Worlds, as long as I think I'm good enough, I think you could pilot a good enough deck, be the best, say you're the best player in the room, and you could probably end up topping and winning. But now there's an extra factor that comes with the new generation of Weiss, which is matchups are a real thing now. I don't think they were much of a thing back in the past. The other thing is there's more strong decks. When I originally won Worlds, AOT was the strongest deck. There was no deck that even, like, the only deck that even came close was Sao. So, and then the next year was Konosuba entered the fray. So there was so little good decks that if you could have piloted those decks properly, there's a high probability, as long as, you make the correct plays, that you'd end up winning, because the decks really didn't have much counterplay within each other up until like maybe 2019 or so. So I think that's the biggest difference, is like I'm thinking about all these decks and what are my pros and cons against them, and is the deck I'm taking really the right choice? Like, do I have more good matchups versus bad matchups, or what are my bad matchups, type of thing. So I think that's what weighs more on my mental state now, is just like matchups are a big thing now, because there are some matchups that completely shut you down. Like you playing a Neg-Soul deck and Overlord just comes in and sweeps up your board. So it's kind of like, that's the biggest thing that's changed. And from when I first started playing, like skill alone is no longer enough. Now you need to be playing the right deck with the skill.
You think you concur, Steve? Have you also seen that kind of like shift into matchups being a thing?
I think that's a great point that we don't make often enough, is that in other card games, there was always this tension between certain matchups, and when you were choosing, like in Magic, you've got like maybe like 6 or 7 decks that are at the top of a meta, we'll say. And then there's tension between some of those matchups where it's like good tension, bad tension, where it's like either I feel like this matchup is extremely favorable because of the nature of the way the 2 decks play, or I feel the matchup is extremely unfavorable because of the same reason. And that was never really present in Weiss before, because a lot of decks were employing very similar strategies. They were all like plussing one combo with decent power into early play healers into some kind of finisher. And there weren't as many unique game plans as that exist now. And so that's a really good thing to point out, that decks like Overlord, decks like 8 Standby Hololive, decks like Atla, decks like Azki-Gura, they're employing these highly risky, highly profitable, diverse strategies. And it is hard to respond to one of them appropriately without losing some strength somewhere else.
And so, Riaz, I'm curious, when do you think matchups, I guess, started mattering? Like, really?
I think the first case was 2019 Worlds. That was when you had a rock, paper, scissors format. You had AOT that was good against Konosuba, but then you had Konosuba that was good against Fate. And AOT was very bad against Fate. So that was like the first time I experienced like, okay, well, I actually, even if I'm better than my opponent, it's really hard for me to win against Fate due to the nature of how AOT worked and what Fate did. And that was the first time where I experienced, leading up to that Worlds, it was like, okay, well, I pray I just don't run into Fate. That I can't. That was the first time in a long time. The first time in Weiss specifically, because I did play other card games before, but first time in Weiss where I'm like, I don't want to see this matchup.
Did you see it?
But no, there were only two Fates in the entire Worlds, and they fought each other first round and knocked themselves out, which was actually Kid King and Jason.
Wow.
I believe.
Yeah. No, it's
were the ones.
That's funny.
So,
yeah. Because it reminds me as well, like there was a Pokemon regional earlier last or at the end of last year, I think it was Pittsburgh, where the winner was playing. So he was playing a deck based around Lugia, and Lugia is weak to electric type in the card game, and there's a really big electric type deck running around called based around Miraidon. That just like sets up and gets Pokemon and gets attackers and just kills Lugia dead. And they asked him on stream, they're like, hey, so your deck is really bad into Miraidon. What did you think? Like, what was your plan for the Miraidon matchup? And he was like, oh, I just hoped I didn't see it. And I didn't.
Yeah, I think people underrate how much that comes into play during tournaments, is because in Weiss, we always talk about, you need a little bit of luck to win tournaments, but now there's an additional tangent to it where it's like, you need to not run into the matchup that is highly unfavorable for you, like multiple times.
Yeah. And so I guess, what is it? Is there any other times so far that you've had to just been like, I don't want to run into this?
No, I mean, now it's like every time after that, right? Like it's like, so 2020 Worlds, 2022 Worlds, that is like, I pray I don't see, the deck I took was particularly good against the meta decks, like, which was like 8 standby Quints, and it even was doing well against 7DS. I was like, I pray I don't see Don Machi or MTI. And ironically, those were the matchups I saw the first 2 rounds. I lost my first 2 rounds. Because my deck particularly does not do well against, especially MTI. The deck I took AOT, but like a different variant of AOT. So that was the biggest travesty where I built for a majority of the meta, and I saw the lowest percentage of the meta in my first 2 rounds, because I think there are only like 2 MTI players and 4 Danmachi players in the entire Worlds. And I happened to be matched up against one of the 2 MTI and one of the 4 Danmachi. And I got destroyed.
Would you say, so I want to talk about your how you prepare for Worlds. Can you talk a little bit about your preparation process, when it starts, and has it changed as you've gone to Worlds more often?
I think the only time it has, so let's start with the process, I guess. So what I do is I train each season as if it was a World. So if I'm at the spring season, I look at the sets that are out. I look at the sets that are available. So let's say Houston Regionals, I don't know, somewhere in March. So I will be looking for trios. I'll be looking. They even take trios as like a sort of practice thing as well. I start I say, okay, these decks are out. I look at all the sets, like all the cards in those sets that are out. If no one's built a deck for them already, I will attempt to build my own variant of those decks, and then I would prepare like, okay, these are what these sets can do. What set can I take that can stop all of this or give me the best probability of winning? And I look at that from that standpoint per, like, I guess, rotation of tournaments. So we go spring, then we go into fall. And then obviously, but now there's a ban list, right? So technically, because Wizard actually does ban list now, the way I approach things are a lot more different than I did back in the past when they were no ban lists. Because if something was really good, I'd be like, okay, well, I'm just going to play that 24/7 until Worlds. Now you can't really do that anymore. So that's kind of like the process. I kind of look at all the sets from the date of the tournament and then make sure I know what all those sets do. And then I make a decision based on what those sets are. As for what was the other question?
So has your, like, when does it start? What is your, like, so you figure out what you're gonna play, you build it. Are you a hard committer? Do you hard commit early to the first thing that you think is reasonable, or do you sample, like, you could get it to a short list and sample some stuff?
I get it to short list because the way sets are now, especially because before, so this is where my preparation has changed. Before, we knew what sets did.
Right.
A lot of times before they came out, because they would take Japanese sets, bring them over. Now you have English exclusive in the mix, which we won't really know until they come out, and then you don't actually know. There's because they're dropping more relevant Japanese sets too, as well. Sometimes it's a lot harder now. Like, so what could be strong may not be strong in 2 months. So I like to I basically queue it up, and I put a couple of decks in, like, the back burner, and I train with those decks. And then as I get closer to the date, like for Worlds or whatever, I would play like equal games with it. So, like, let's say I'm fighting Avatar, Overlord, and Slime. Then I'm going to take one of my decks and fight, about 4 to 5 matches per day with each one of those matches. Oh, each one of those matchups. Then I'll take the other deck and play it, and then I'll take the other deck and play it, and I'll keep rotating this until we get closer, and then that will give me enough data to see which deck gives me the least number of matchups I don't want to see.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I do it.
Makes sense. And with that, we're all talking about how to get ready, what were you thinking about the World's meta. It's time to close out of Center Stage and go into somewhere familiar. Somewhere that Steve likes a lot. Somewhere that Steve can't go without. Where are we going, Steve?
You know where we're going. We're going to the Spy Corner.
Let's talk about the World's meta. We just mentioned that for an example, you were playtesting a deck, some given deck with equal games against Avatar, Overlord, Slime, others. Do you feel comfortable sharing what's on your short list?
My short list is Slime, Arifetta, and Hololive. Those are my short list.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, and let's talk about those 3 sets at a high level really quickly. We're talking about decks with a lot of explosive damage. Either at the end game or in the mid game. We're talking about decks with, in the case of Hololive and Slime, like a lot of tools, particularly level 0 and level 3 tools. And then in the case of Arifetta and Slime, we're also talking about extreme compression possibilities.
Right.
So we're talking about each facet of the game being cranked to the absolute maximum in one direction.
Yeah. And I guess, and thinking about what we're actually going to see at Worlds, I just said it, but I'll say it again. We're thinking about Overlord, Hololive, Slime, Avatar. I guess let's run down what else we're thinking is going to be there.
Guilty Gear is guaranteed. It's guaranteed.
Somebody wants to bring it, and somebody will.
Yeah,
I'm
because
sure.
the thing is that the unproven decks are the scariest. Because no one's piloted them at a tournament. No one's resulted with them. And so there's no known builds. We have some ideas
Yeah.
of what we think's good.
Yep.
But there's always the possibility of cooking up something. You know, part of the reason SDS did so well was because people seized on a variant of the build that most people were not thinking about, and they just cranked it to the absolute extreme. And so I think that that's possible for Guilty Gear, even though everybody knows all the cards in it. How it behaves with regard to the rest of the meta is somewhat still unknown.
Yeah. Quince, for sure. Itsuki, Nino. I don't know if an Ichika player qualified, but I feel like one of them did, and like it's a possibility.
Yeah, at least one, right?
Right.
Because Atlanta, or not Atlanta, Chicago, the guy who got second.
Chicago, yeah. And I guess you can always think that there will be other kind of like dark horse picks.
Always.
And like, you know, sets that people like. So, you know, Sword Art Online, Bang Dream, or kind of like ever-present sets that might be jammed into it.
Riaz, do you think that MTI is worlds worthy after the unban?
No. Only for the small fact that it gets outed out by like 2 or 3 sets that may have been played at higher quantity.
Right.
Yeah.
Stand by Nino and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that this going back to what one of the things you had mentioned, the existence of some sets makes it very hard on some strategies to even exist because their game plan invalidates your strategy at such a high level. But I think the thing that's keeping the meta having high tension is the tension between Slime and Overlord and all the other matchups in the meta. Because the Slime matchup for Overlord feels very difficult because of the nature of how they approach the board and how Overlord has difficulty executing their game plan against Slime. But there are a lot of decks that would be a lot better off if Overlord just disappeared. Because any field-based strategy feels absolutely cursed to play against Overlord.
Really nice for your Ari Ferretta list that just bounces everybody and figures it out a little bit later. Or I guess you'd probably just kill Overlord since they just hit themselves a million times and then get slapped in the face with 2 soul anyway. But I don't know. What do you think, Riaz?
About what, the Overlord matchup?
Yeah,
or what?
the Overlord matchup, I guess, in general, for like sets to go into.
So it's funny because a lot of sets actually have a lot of tools to deal with it fairly well, especially Slime. I think the problem with Overlord is that it's too, it's like one of those decks where you have to like respect it, but it's also like pretty high roll. Like a lot of things have to go well for them early on, so they don't just get bodied by the time Irons comes out. Because I particularly don't care much fighting the set because I don't plan to play a board-based deck that gets hurt by it.
Yeah.
But I think there's too much it does in the game of Weiss right now, especially with a lot of like decks outputting a high amount of soul damage. The Overlord prefers like a slower game.
Yeah.
Like the meta is slower, that's when Overlord is good. But the problem is there's too many decks that what people might consider being A tier that like do too much damage. You got like Azure Lane, you got Ari Ferretta, you got Choice Pants Gura, right? It's like so many soul triggers. Like so much can go wrong where they might not have time to recover. And their recovery tools are very small, very low. I think it's just mashing brainstorm, to be honest. If we're talking about like the same Overlord,
yeah,
like,
we are.
Or so.
Yeah, we're talking
like
about
whatever has been topping what people think is good. Standard Irons, Shaltier stuff. Yeah. I just don't think but it's weird because you have to respect it. You can't be like, oh, well, I'm gonna go in there with like Neg Soul Sora, and then first matchup you fight Overlord, and it's like, well, my cards, if I don't hit 2 first, is going to be really bad. And Overlord has a really good chance of hitting 2 first because they take a lot of damage, and their compression is very poor. So they're generally hitting 2 first a lot of times.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was referring to earlier. Is that I think the meta would be absolutely polluted by field-based power decks if it wasn't for the fact that there's this deck that will literally just blow up all your cards. And so if you're thinking about taking a deck that's like 8 standby, pick your flavor, or you know, something like this, or minus souls is another great like variants of SAO or Hololive minus souls, like those decks immediately have to think about that conversation and be like, so do I just lose if this shows up and I just roll against it? And then the question behind that question is, how many people are really going to be willing to pilot this shit? Like, how many people are going to play Overlord at Worlds?
I mean, it's the same matchup like question that we were talking about earlier, right? It's come in once and once again. It's like, okay, Overlords exist, and it's like, I'll lose. To even call back to like the Pokemon metaphor, it's like, okay, I'm playing Lugia. If I find this Miraidon, this Overlord player, I'm going to get zapped out of existence. But if we just avoid Overlord, do we just win? But yeah. Even so, it's like with like a next soul strategy, it's even still difficult to say if like that can win, because just in the meta right now, as we also said, that all of the finishers are just so explosive that even fucking like climaxless finishers Slime can still kind of set up a lethal board from you if you're sitting at 2-4 and 2-3.
Yeah, it's a very high speed, high damage meta, and so there will be room for field-based decks, and people will play field-based decks even despite Overlord existing. Like, there will be 8 standby Hololive decks, if for no other reason than the Clock Tower said it's the best deck in the meta. So, like, I mean, there are gonna be people who try that strategy.
It's okay. Just real quick, I did try playing that list a little bit the other day, because I like to have an idea of like how all the decks play in general.
Yeah.
Man,
I was putting one together last night.
What a weird playing list for me specifically, man. I'm just like, I guess this is my board, and I guess I don't really have another finisher right here. We just kind of have to hope that we could keep everything and like poke you and like not die. It feels suspect a lot, but it also kind of just works like when you're not getting your entire board blown up by Overlord.
Yeah.
So it does make sense, but it's so alien to me because after playing Slime the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, okay, do X. X gets to Muron. Muron gets to X. X kills you, or I'm dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas, like, a lot of these Hololive games, I'll be like, I did everything to get all my climaxes back, and I have a board. And by God, I hope you don't kill me.
Yeah, all the 8 standby decks have a similar sort of thing. Nino is a little better about it, but they're all kind of suffering from the same success where they're like, in exchange for overwhelming like board presence, you have to give up something, and the something is like really good finishing. So you're trading your really good finishing for like winning on the board probably at every point of the game.
Sure. You mentioned that you were considering a Hololive list on your short list, Riaz. Which Hololive list were you thinking about?
For me, it's Caligura.
Mm-hmm.
I call it the fake 2-soul deck.
The fake 2-soul deck, yeah.
With 30 plus triggers, you slam, a choice, and I think that's like, really strong. Like if the opponent's not having a bad game, you still get your combo off. If the opponent's having a bad game, you get your combo off, and they're like a level behind.
Yeah, for sure.
And you don't want to be a level behind when fighting Gura, because if they're the ones that hit level 3 second, you're probably dead.
Right, for sure.
So,
yeah,
that would be the only Hollow of this I would trust, because it does not lose to Overlord. It does not give complete agency to the opponent like Standby Gura. and then it does not lose to Slime over like 8 Standby Hololive.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I would choose it. It has like the best matchups across the board.
And I guess touching back on like, what is it? I guess like Standby Gura, because it's been so popular without garnering many results in English. I think it won one tournament and top 8'd maybe 2 other tournaments off the top of my head. Why do you think that the Standby Gura archetype is just generally less good than the choice Panzer?
I think it's 2 things. I think one, it had its whole view on, like, a lot of people that pay attention to JP in English, they probably already know what it did, had a lot of experience with it, notice its kill ranges, and adjust accordingly. The other thing I think is because of how fast the game is, how much damage decks can output, its chance to win got worse as more sets came out as we got closer to the actual Worlds date. So it's one of those decks that has like very poor deck control. It literally just does not really do much besides trying to triple Gura. Like, whether you win or lose, you're probably going to triple Gura every game. But the problem is, I think it gives up too much in the current game state where decks can just instantly fix themselves, instantly get resources. You can even argue that Overlord, like, you stand by your Guras and you just like send those Guras to the waiting room, and that feels so bad because what your point of your deck just got outed.
Right.
You know, I think there's too many sets in the meta that hit hard and fast for that to do much. I think that's the biggest issue why it didn't have as enough success. I think like this comes to the back to the Overlord statement. I think this comes, well, you have to look at why it did so well in Japan. Look at the sets they were fighting, right? Those sets, you know, were also around the same speed of Standby Gura, and if you're on the same speed, then you're probably going to win as the Standby Gura player because you're just going to pop 2 Guras. You can even do Guras at level 2 and just kill them from 2 sometimes. And it just, like, you had the time. Now with the game so fast, you can be like level 2 after level 1 and then level 3, and you're sitting there, well, I don't have enough for triple, or I gotta wait one more turn, and that one turn you wait, you might have died from, like, I don't know, triple Itsuki or something.
Yeah, true.
So you just, there's too much, I guess let's put it, too many good sets in the game currently to justify a deck that gives up everything for a finisher when it's not consistent on what level and what damage you'll be when you actually triple Gura.
Right.
Riaz, as a noted friend of the podcast and as a personal friend, I need you to validate my next statement.
Yeah.
Can you please explain why Slime is insanely broken and is going to win Worlds?
Oh, I don't know about winning Worlds. No, but I could touch on why I think it's probably one of the best sets, if not the best set in the game.
Yeah, for sure.
The biggest thing which people underestimate is level 0 stock swap.
Yes.
A stock swap.
Yes.
On a relevant set at 0. We're not talking about Mob Psycho here. We're talking about Slime.
Yeah.
You know, so a relevant set with a stock swap. That is the biggest thing. That means throughout the entire game, they can hold this over your head. So stock generation strategies generally don't get punished to level 3. Slime's like, well, I can punish you whenever I want.
It's honestly, it's honestly so disgusting, like how easy that punish can be sometimes. I literally had a game like last night. Somebody was like, okay. Oh, and the funniest part was he was playing Slime. He was like, all right, we got to block down. I'm gonna triple Muron combo. We've got climaxes. I was like, Ricky for the level 0 stock swap. Hit you for 12 stock for 10 deck. Guaranteed 3 climaxes out. Die.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. That they have the only relevant level 2 resource engine left because they went and like murked Alice.
Right.
So I think this is what a lot of people also may or may not know, but the fact that they have a level 2 combo that generates so much resources means that if they're doing bad, they always have the ability to catch up. they can stabilize. If they just ate a bunch of damage, they're one of the few sets that can stabilize and just try to slow roll the game. Because if they ate a bunch of damage, they pull out a bunch of non-climaxes. Yeah, their search targets may not be that great. If they just get a double cancel or triple cancel, they're back in the game. Because then that leads into non-committed, like no climax combo finishers. That's also a thing. So like you can do these plays where you're not tied to a climax. So you always have some of the best refreshes because you don't have to. Well, I need to hoard this climax, or I need to, make sure I get the climax on my finishing turn. Like they just drop their finishers and call it a day. And third thing is versatility. There are like 2 to 3 ways you can build this deck. Now I guess we're talking about after ban now, but I mean. There's different ways. So there's different, you got high deck speed on the set 2 Shizu. You got high roll and high like resource generation on the standby. You can try to like be Azure Lane at home or something and play the 2 soul, but the difference here is that you have stock swap and Azure Lane doesn't. So, and they have hexproof, right? Like hexproof is one of the biggest factors of why it's so strong. I mean, like it doesn't matter if people are playing field disruptor or not. The fact is that no matter whether you are or not, they have this thing and they're like, you can't touch me unless you like, I don't know, you can play Guilty Gear, I guess, and send the entire board back to their hand. But it's just, there's too much, it's high consistency. Its worst thing is the fact that it just does not have a strong finishing, but it's acceptable enough in like 2024 or 23, whichever year you want to call it.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I think those are things why it's like insane. 0 stock swap, hexproof. They can run double resource generation because their finishers don't require climax, so they can always come back if they get a little lucky after getting unlucky.
And talking about the different kind of archetypes on it, what have you tested? Have you just been testing all of the archetypes? Or do you have one that you prefer?
I've only tested 2 archetypes just because I deemed the third one not worth testing.
Sure.
But the 2 archetypes I've tested is standby with the Miron, so level 1 Mirror and level 2 Miron, and then 8 pants.
Right.
With Lissa 2 Shizu.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They both seem around the same power level. They just do different things.
Yeah, true. I guess touching on your point about how it can kind of stabilize and come back, I think one of the nice things about standby is that even when I've had to like cope, quote unquote, and like stand by a Miron instead of a Shuna, like if you have like 2 of this combo on the field and you swing 3 times and we just plus 5 stock, and it kind of can help you. It can kind of help you snowball later in the game where like maybe like the later Miron turns are scuffed, but you built up such a stock like advantage in the early game that you can be like, okay, well I can still pay for everything, including all these finishers that I'm gonna use to kill you right now. And I guess I still personally prefer standby over the pants. In Dallas we did do some testing of the 2 soul just to like see, I guess, if the damage push like merited its play at all, but I think I'm also with you in that I think that pants and standby, I guess Shizu or Rimuru leading up to the Miron is kind of like the way to go in a sense.
I think just for me personally, the part that about the standby deck that's kind of underrated is the downside of that 1-0 Rimuru was that it was small and couldn't side attack. So it had some risk implied into it before, where if you were against the wrong boards, then you couldn't really like, you would lose your guy in the face of like trying to get the twin drive. Now, pretty much as soon as you drop your 1 combo, everybody's going to be 7-5-ish forever. And there's a lot of boards that cannot compete with that and just will lose on board to that for forever. And because it transitions seamlessly into the Miron turns where they're like, okay, well now the number to beat is up to 13k, and it's like, how many decks can really reach that?
Yeah. I guess another thing I want to touch on, kind of going off of talking about all this stuff, more into how we play the game. Steve, you have been playing more of, and Riaz, you've played a lot of Weiss on the Weiss Simulator, made by our boy Blake over here.
Yes.
I'm curious, what do you think it's better to play on the simulator than in person? Or kind of like what the ups and downs are of playtesting a lot on the simulator versus perhaps like just 40 hours a week in IRL, somebody sitting across from you. I'll go with you first, Riaz.
I mean, I personally like playing physical cards more. I don't like to. I think the simulator is really good when you're trying to test a deck strategy and when you're trying to, figure out what you want to mulligan, figure out how to approach matchups. I think the simulator is really good for that stuff. It's really good because it's nice and easy. It's nice, fast, and easy. You don't have to like get your webcams out or travel to some other place. So I think there's nothing wrong with testing simulator, but I think like you should, as much as you test on the simulator, you should probably test in real life and compare the data, because when it comes to digital stuff, I've seen some crazy stuff that can happen in simulator, but it's not like far-fetched. Like, okay, well, I just literally started with 5 climaxes in my hand and 4 of them the exact same ones, but at the same time, this is a real game state in real life. So any practice in the simulator is not discounted. I think it's far from it. I think combined with real time like real play or real life testing or like person in testing and digital testing, I think it's both fine. I think though you need both of them, because I think there's something about muscle memory and something about like playing the cards that help you a little bit better. I feel like if you're always all digital, for me at least, it feels very foreign if I pick up the cards. That's how it felt when I picked up like Ari Freda. I played it a lot in the simulator before it came out in English, and I picked it up and it felt so foreign to touch the cards and play it. But that's just like a personal thing. There's nothing. There's no like math on that.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a personal thing. But yeah, I think it's fine playing on simulator. But I do feel like personally you should play both.
I think where the simulator really comes in clutch is it can provide you with a variety of opponents that you may not have access to in person. Like, obviously where we live, we are privileged enough to have huge Weiss communities and like plenty of reliable playtesters and tons of locals, and like we're just embarrassed with the riches of like in-person Weiss play. But there are going to be people who don't have that kind of access, and maybe like you only have access to 1 or 2 really trusted teammates, and you're not getting the kind of like wide testing exposure that you would like to have. Like, you're seeing the same matchup a lot, but you're not seeing different matchups enough. Like, for example, I feel like Ben obviously is one of my primary testing partners, and
this man has seen so much slime.
Like,
I feel like I could enough of slime.
Yes, I feel like I've played that matchup too much at this point, where like I'm probably even though obviously my opinions on slime are well known, but I feel like even I might have just played that matchup too much to the exclusion of other matchups, and like my understanding of other sets as compared to the ones I'm practicing are flawed, because I'm not seeing enough exposure to those. And so even though I have access to many more playtest partners and many more cards, I still feel like that's possible. And so that's where I feel like the webcam and simulator and remote playtesting in general can pay off. But I will say the simulator can introduce some bad habits, because it answers a lot of questions without you asking. That's my main problem with the simulator, is that like it'll tell you where the climaxes are if they're in the waiting room. It'll tell you how many there are, how many cards are in the deck. And so the problem is having free access to that information kind of nullifies your brain thinking about them. And so when it comes to playing the actual game, you just won't ask those questions as frequently, because you'll assume that you know when you don't.
Yeah, I guess on all of those points, I'm definitely the most spoiled one in the room, because this month I'm going to be going to play Weiss Schwarz every single day of every single week up until I leave for Japan. and I work a remote job, or for half of the week I work a remote job. This means that on Monday and Tuesday and Friday, we can log into Discord, go into the Weiss Schwarz Discord, or go ask somebody that's available, hey, do you want to play webcam Weiss? And I can get like another 3 or 4 hours before the like 5 hours of locals that night. Which, it's kind of disgusting, honestly. I should probably stop playing so much Weiss Schwarz. But what I will say is that it's what is it? It is really important to like get a variance of opponents for sure. IMO, because like you'll just learn you just naturally will learn things that you will not learn if you're playing the same locals, if you're playing the same people, etc., etc. Even though I'm putting in all these locals hours, I think like all the webcam games I'm getting in with just different people playing different decks is probably even more so important. Like, I didn't even realize that how hard I could just get completely punched in the face by the Dow trade counter until somebody was playing Chairman's like 8-book Dow deck against me, and it's like, okay, I removed Demon Continent trade. I was like, all right, let me go read my cards again. Huh. 2 or more Demon Continent plus 5,000 power. Okay. All of your other Demon Continent characters get one. Okay, yeah. And if you have this, all of your other Demon Continent characters. Oh, okay. Yeah, they're 5/5s. Right? And it's just like, sure, is that maybe like a symptom of just like not knowing the card pool? Yes, maybe. But like, really good way to remember things forever is to be exposed to them and being hit in the face by them.
Sure. Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know? Yeah.
And so I'm with you in that, like, even if you don't have like that much of like in-person practice with your locals, maybe like more, I do think it is important to get more either webcam or simulator games with people from all walks of life and all types of gameplay, just like into your Weiss practice for sure. It is good to learn new things. We love learning new things. And speaking about that Dell deck, to close out the show today, we all have our decks that we're kind of thinking are at the top and that we're gonna try to shortlist and play. I'm probably going to play some version of Standby Slime. I'm still in between using Mask and not using Mask. There's kind of benefits to both. I'm not really sure like which one I like the most yet. We'll probably touch on this in our last episode before Worlds. What is it? Riaz, we've touched on your shortlist. Steve, I believe your shortlist is kind of looking like Avatar, Hololive, Guilty Gear-ish, but that seems unlikely.
I think without some like dramatic changes in playtest, I think I can say fairly confidently, and I don't mind saying, I will probably be taking Caligura to Worlds.
Sure.
Because it's the deck I've been playing the most, and I feel like its matchups are reasonable. I would have. It's such a small thing. It sounds like, but there would be 2 things that could have changed my mind. 1, if they had unrestricted the Kaguya Zero game, I feel like that deck would have a lot of legs in the meta because its Slime matchup is winnable and its Overlord matchup is winnable. But you really need that, like, you need all the Zero game in my opinion, and even cutting out small pieces of it makes it much harder to pilot. It's very similar to Azure Lane, but it has a level 0 stock swap. And so I think it would have been possible in the meta had they had access to all their tools. Why it was unrestricted, who knows. The other deck that I was considering a lot was Guilty Gear, and if they had any stock swap at all, then I would have seriously considered playing Guilty Gear. But the problem with the current meta is that if you get compressed down on, then you're going to lose the game because your finisher is a fistful of 3s and they just won't land, and against a highly compressed opponent. And I just don't think that I don't know if that's an acceptable way to approach the current meta. It's like, well, 30% of the time I just lose because my opponent compresses down and there's nothing I can do.
Yeah, for sure. So
plus I've been pimping Caligura on this podcast for 8 straight months probably.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is.
All right, there you go. Yeah, because they completely kneecapped the deck that you grinded for the entire season. So
never mind that.
Yeah, we got.
I'm not mad.
He's not mad. I'm not mad. Please don't put in the paper that I'm mad. But to round out the show, after that highly extended tangent, what do we think are the dark horses for this tournament? I guess, like, are there any realistically? And I think at this point, any dark horse will necessarily have to have a matchup that they hate, right? I think all of the top decks are good because they might have matchups that are unfavorable, but not matchups that they're unwinnable or like they just completely hate, right? But what do we? I'll start with you, Riaz. What do you think? Let's say 1 to 3 dark horses. If you had to pick, what do you think they would be?
I got 2 dark horses in my mind.
All right.
There's 3 technically, but that depends on, what I think versus what the community thinks.
I want to know what you think, Riaz. We got you on the show.
So the first dark horse is, and I don't know if it's considered dark horse. I still consider it dark horse because I don't know if anyone would actually take this to Worlds, but I do consider Soul Rush Azure Lane kind of like a dark horse. I think it's what it does is kind of annoying at early points, and I just don't expect it to be played in high quantity, so that's why I consider dark horse. The other one's 8 Standby Overlord. I hate Neg 3 Soul. That targets its own card.
Yeah.
8 Standby Overlord. As long as it dodges majority of the regular Overlord matchups, it has a pretty good matchup against like literally everything else. Slime is like debatable. I think the problem here is that like you're not big enough.
Yeah,
so
you get overpowered on the board. Yeah.
So, but like any other match, I think that deck just sweeps up fairly easily. Because Neg 2 and Neg 3 is a huge difference, and they can drop it in multiples, especially if they're winning board. But I don't really, I don't know what people actually play just because, if Slime is considered, the most played best deck, that's kind of preventing a lot of what I would consider dark horses being played.
Sure.
But,
so let's say, let's say that we want to, sorry to interrupt, but let's say we want to ignore Slime, right? For some godforsaken reason, you've been like, all right, screw it. I just don't see Slime, but I'm sure I can win against everybody else. What dark horse would that be?
That's just 8 Standby Overload for me.
All right, fair enough. Yeah.
I think for myself, I consider all Bang Dream decks to be dark horses, and I think that there's always room for them in the meta because regardless of field, they have a cost-efficient way to deconstruct any compression you might have and then land a bunch of damage. So for not very much stock, they can send out 6 packets while stock swapping you and Fumioing you. And they can stock swap you at level 2 for 1 stock. Like, as long as those like parameters exist, they will always be able to steal games because they can scam you in ways that other decks never will be able to do. Nobody has a stock swap that cheap that can come in that quickly and just ruin your whole life. And there's a reason they haven't reprinted Buns for Luck. It's because like that mechanic is unparalleled in strength. So for me, like, whatever shell you decide to put that into is up for some debate. But if you have 6 packets and you're reshuffling them after decompressing them, like, that's going to be a deck with legs. If it runs hot, you could be destroyed by a deck like that.
Kind of in a similar vein, I think Hendrickson Elizabeth Hendrickson can still be a dark horse to victory. You previously playtested with it, Riaz, but and even though now there might be like better decks that any of us would want to take, I don't hate Hendrickson at all. Like as a deck archetype to bring in, like obviously you're not going to be affecting the slime board or like field presence boards very heavily, and I guess probably Overlord will like kind of take you out in the sense of like you lose the Elizabeths most likely if they're like just sitting in the back. But even so, it's just a very efficient early game engine, and it has access to Fumio's stock swap. And sometimes if you just get Fumio'd and you get burned forward and the Mocha's hit, then bro, you're dead.
Yeah, shout out to Iron City Gaming for demonstrating that to us.
True.
Yeah.
Shout out to you, John. Shout out to you. You definitely were doomer as hell after you got two souls scammed by me in round 2, and then you won the tournament. So, I think it worked out.
Yeah, I think decompression strategies will always have a place in the meta, almost regardless, as long as you.
But even in that sense, because Guilty Gear does at least have a Fumio, and like it is a new set, right? It could catch somebody, right?
I think that deck is like Overlord in a sense, where you have there's like a standby build that's like an ambitious build, where like if you stand by Ramlethal and then block them down, and you get to do 2 Ramlethal combos, like it's hard to survive that, just because that's just like a ton of damage being dumped on your head. But it has the exact same weaknesses as Overlord, where if the game doesn't go slow enough, then it doesn't feel like you did anything. Like you stand by it and then you hit level 3. Now it's like, okay, well then the standby didn't really matter. Like you got to save 2 stock, but you had it anyway. And so it was like the struggle that Guilty Gear will have is twofold. One is they have trouble getting on the board. A lot of their characters are small and their back row is weak. And the other problem that they'll have is that their most reliable, cheapest, best finisher is a fistful of 3s. And so against compression decks, it will be hard to win. You could pair that with some other tools to try and make it easier. But I think in general, both builds that I tried for Guilty Gear felt reasonable, but they struggled for the same reason. Is that if you see your opponent at 2-4, 2-5, you're pretty confident you're not going to win from that distance with your finisher, unless you get really lucky or their board state is trash.
Sure. And honestly, if we are going to talk about like slime being the most prevalent matchup, let's say, actually, you know what? Just really quick, can we do the math on this? Sure. Let's hop over to Weiss Tea Time. I'm actually highly curious. How many people qualify to Worlds off of slime?
It has to be an absolute ton.
All right, so 1. Yeah. Let's see. 2.
While he's figuring that
3,
out,
4, 5. That's right. White Plains.
if you had to pick a deck that was the best possible matchup for slime, what would it be?
Like the best possible matchup against slime?
Yes, against slime, ignoring all other matchups.
I think Arifetta is the best matchup against slime. Maybe biased or not, but I think so, because the problem with slime is there is no real. It does not really have a bad matchup.
No, it doesn't.
like that's its biggest thing. So what you need to do is your deck actually care, and I think the best way is to have the ability to push out a mass amount of damage. You still have stock swap at level 3 to answer them. You have the ability to heal down. I think you have a lot of plussing. So like you're not affected by what they're doing, and the worst case scenario is that they have stock swap. But like I think that's something that everyone had to deal with anyway when they fought slime, is that they had stock swap. So I think like you need a deck that pushes out a lot of damage, but a deck that pluses a lot, a deck that has a decent finisher. And I would argue that as long as you don't trigger 2 souls, Arifetta's finishers are on par with slime. and damage number wise.
Yeah, I can agree.
I think that would be the best matchup besides another slime deck.
Yeah. The slime mirror is famously a 60-40 matchup, depending on who you ask.
It's just whoever gets second, they get the 60. That's how it works.
But yeah,
it's just such a consistent set, right? Like
Yeah.
slime is just really good.
it sure is. Yeah, just to proc your worst nightmares a little bit more, Steve. 15 players out of, I think, like the 70 max for Worlds. Like, what's our max player count? Let's say
Yeah.
everybody goes. Is it like 72, I think?
Yeah,
Okay.
something like that.
15 of those 72 people qualified to Worlds playing slime.
Yeah, so that's like 20% if everybody goes.
If everybody goes.
And they won't.
And you don't even count, like, maybe somebody will switch to slime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're going in position for Worlds is that you're gonna try and dodge slime, I think that's a hard ask.
Yeah.
Like, you need to at least understand that matchup and how your deck plays into it, even if it's not good.
All right.
And honestly, it's the biggest deterrent to playing Overlord at Worlds. Is that matchup feels absolutely cursed.
All right, one last super for fun thing. How many slimes do we think make top 8 at Worlds this year? Riaz, we'll start with you.
I'm gonna say
You're
3.
gonna say 3. Steve?
Yeah, that sounds like the right. That sounds like the right number.
That sounds right. I think so too. We're all a one-track mind on this front.
Yeah, it won't be more than that, just because like there'll be set diversity that comes into play and and like, you know, getting rolled or whatever.
Yeah.
But I fully expect 30% of the field to be playing slime.
Yeah, for sure. And that's gonna be our show for today. Thank you very much to Riaz for hopping on the show. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts with us. Do you have anything else that you would like to say to the audience before you sign off?
Just thanks for having me, and Weiss is a fun game. Play it, guys.
Weiss is a fun game. You heard it right here from a world champion. Weiss is, in fact, a fun game. You love to see it. We started a Ko-Fi. Yay! It'll be in the description below from now on, or in the description of the podcast episode if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, a variety of other podcast listening methods. Feel free to throw money at us and receive one of our many bonuses. And if you'd like to support us on a monthly basis, and if you, for whatever reason, feel like you want to do that with a $10 a month basis, you can create the credit sequence. You can manifest it into, you can force me to make a credit sequence so that you can be in it. And at that point, I'll probably include some of the $5 supporters as well. But I don't want to do that unless somebody starts giving us $10 a month. So if you do that, you will create the credit sequence. It will be your fault, and your name will be in flashy colors and some kind of way that you want it, and we'll shout you out at the end of the episode. You know, all that jazz, all sorts of fun things. But for now, that's our show for today. So tune in next time after your next deck out, and don't you forget to take the refresh point. Well, in the process of making this episode and testing out what the Ko-Fi page looked like, 3 of our locals have already signed up at the Crazy Supporter tier. So, shout outs to Andrew Nguyen, John Caparasso, and Billy for signing up at our Crazy Supporter tier and giving us, you know, just bundles of joy. You're looking at this wonderful credit sequence now, all sorts of good stuff. If you want to join them, Ko-Fi link is in the description below, and so don't forget to take the refresh point.